Hi everyone, the partial prophet here. Thanks for tuning in. So I wanted to remind you that we know in part and we prophesy in part, and then when Jesus comes, we will see fully. Okay, so today I wanted to talk about Babylon has fallen. Okay, so first just give a quick view of Esther. I've talked about Esther in my previous videos. But we'll just do a quick overview here. So in Esther 1, there is a banquet for 180 days, and I believe that that connects to Trump's deal of the century, because you can parse out 180 to be 666, and so the deal of the century was on January 28th of 2020, okay? And then it says, when these days were completed, the king gave a banquet lasting 7 days for all the people who were present at the citadel in Susa, and that the royal wine was plentiful at this banquet. And so what I believe is that the 7-day banquet was the Feast of Booths, which, I mean, it wasn't actually the Feast of Booths during this time, but it was, we were fulfilling the prophetic shadows of the Feast of Booths during that time. And so that happened March 11th, and I call that 311. And so it was March 11 to 317 matched up with, on the Hebrew calendar, it was the Dar 15 and 21, which would match the Feast of Booths. Okay, so we had this like week time from 311 to 317, where we were kind of getting ready for the shutdown, and then we had this shutdown for 40 days. Okay, and the other thing that's really interesting too is 311 was Shushan Purim. And so it's very fascinating because we're fulfilling the prophetic shadows of Purim, because in the holiday of Purim, the Jewish people wear masks. Like they wear costumes and masks and stuff like that. And so it's really interesting that the coronavirus started on 311 on Shushan Purim, because I believe that as God's people we need to be wearing masks until Jesus comes and separates us from the rest, until God makes a division between his people and his enemies, basically. So we had a shutdown for 40 days, 318 until 426. Okay. So I talked about this before. Wine is the wrath of God. So when we had this banquet lasting 7 days, basically what it means is that we were experiencing the wrath of God. Okay, so God was sending punishment because of Trump's deal of the century. Okay, and then what happened was the king came and gave orders to each official of his household that he should do according to the desires of each person, which is kind of interesting because, it's like Trump, kind of basically told the governors to do what they wanted to do in their state, in terms of opening up the country. But we had, Trump was encouraging the opening of the country, and then he was trying to get the churches open too. Okay, so the opening of the country lasted for 30 days. And then it said Queen Vashti also gave a banquet for the women in the palace which belonged to King Ahasuerus. And so what I propose is that connects to the Black Lives Matter rioting and looting in the streets. And so I believe that the people that are a part of this quote unquote Black Lives Matter movement are connected to Obama. And so that started on May 26th, which was the 30th day, after the opening of the country. It was the 120th day from the deal of the century. So that is very fascinating, because we find the 120 time frame in the story of Noah, where God gives the wicked people only 120 years before his judgment comes. So 120 days is connected to judgment coming. And he came. And so then we had rioting and looting. And And so what's interesting too is during that time that on the seventh day of the rioting, so this talks about in the story of Esther, it says on the seventh day, the seven eunuchs were to bring Queen Vashti before the king with her royal crown in order to display her beauty. And so what was interesting was that on the seventh day of the rioting, Trump, he really didn't send the National Guard to protect the cities. So that was on June 1st. Really what he did was he did a photo op. Trump has done, during the rioting, he's done a lot of, what do you call it? He has said a lot like he's going to put a stop to it, but I haven't seen a lot of action. Like you would really want to see. So it's just kind of interesting that, Trump did that photo op in front of the church in Washington, D.C. with the closed Bible. I thought that was prophetic, the closed Bible. It's one thing to carry a Bible. It's another thing to actually read the Bible and know what it says. So I have this verse from Psalm 78. It says, the sons of Ephraim were archers equipped with bows, yet they turned back in the day of battle. So I'd like to propose that the day of battle was, first of all, any of the time while Trump was president could have been the day of battle, because we should have been dealing with Iran, we should have been dealing with North Korea, we should have been dealing maybe with China. Definitely Iran though, because I think they're going to be big trouble in the last days. Ephraim is the northern kingdom, which would be connect to America. So then it says the king became very angry and his wrath burned within him. That would be a picture of God. And then it says the king said to the wise men who understood the times, what, according to the law, what should we do with Queen Vashti? So that's a picture of the 7 messianic figures who know what the law says. And basically what they say is that Queen Vashti is wrong, not only the king, but also all the princes and the peoples who are in the provinces of King Ahasuerus. So what we have is Trump is Queen Vashti, is, like Queen Vashti, wronging both the Jewish people and all of God's people in the United States. So basically, then they get rid of Queen Vashti. Okay, and so then I went through these same verses and saw that you could have a second fulfillment, kind of connected more to like just what's been happening in the short term. So that, because I saw that the banquet for 180 days could also connect to the where we've had 3 months of shutdown, protest, and riots. So the 40-day shutdown, the 40-day shutdown, the 30-day of protests from Trump's people, and the 30-day riots from Obama's people. So those actually, if you understand, those kind of match the 666, because what's interesting about that is that, I think, God kind of like gives an eye for an eye, kind of. And so what I think is the shutdown, so the shutdown relates to Trump's first 6, which was moving the embassy to Jerusalem. And so I think because we weren't willing to stay put, in, I think Tel Aviv was where the embassy was first, then God said, okay, I'm going to make you stay put in your houses for 40 days. And then, so that the shutdown is judgment for moving the embassy. And then there's connections with the 30 days and the 30 days to the other 2 6s. So one of them is Trump recognizing the Golan Heights, and the third one is Trump recognizing the West Bank, the connection to the West Bank. So definitely very interesting. And then we see a connection to Esther's first banquet, because during the first banquet, it's Esther, the king, and Haman drinking wine. So, like one of those characters could be connected to Trump, another could be connected to Obama, and then the king would be like God. Or also, or we have like maybe Esther could be the church, the king could be Trump, and then Haman could be Obama drinking wine, which actually that works really well. And so then it says, when these days were completed, the king gave a banquet lasting 7 days. So I think what's going to happen is then we're going to have Jesus come, and he's going to do a 7-day banquet. And that's the week that we read about in Daniel, where he's going to put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering in the middle of the week. Okay, and so we have Jesus the Messiah is here for 7 days. And so that's, there's a connection with that to Esther's second banquet when Haman is revealed. Okay, and so I think when Jesus is here, Haman at this time is going to be Trump, because I think it's gonna, Trump's gonna be okay. So Esther, she's like kind of like weeping and pleading for her people, and then the king says, well, who was it coming against your people? And then she says Haman. And so I think what we're going to see is that it's going to be revealed that Trump caused problems for the Christians in America and for the Jewish people in Israel. And so then Jesus is going to deal with Trump in the 7 days. And then, okay. And then it says, Queen Vashti also gave a banquet for the women in the palace which belonged to King Ahasuerus. So then I think what happens is, then there's a shift from after the Messiah's 7 days. I think he passes the cup to Obama, and Obama gets restored to power, and I think he's going to attack Trump's people after the Messiah stops restraining. And then it says, on the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine. Okay, so I'm wondering if something's going to happen the 7th day that Jesus is here. And so is it possible? So we have Queen Vashti with her royal crown. Well, the coronavirus is a connection to the crown. So is that Trump with leprosy? Does he not come to Jesus on the 7th day? Or because the Bible talks about you don't find manna on the 7th day. And I think manna could be a picture of Trump. And then Jesus, is the bread from heaven. And then, because let's see, so Trump is Queen Vashti, wronged both the Jewish people and all of God's people in the United States. And then, but Queen Vashti could also be a picture of all the people who won't follow Messiah when he is here. And so that connects to, in Matthew 22, we read about the kingdom of heaven is like a king who prepared a wedding banquet for his son. He sent his servants to those who had been invited to the banquet to tell him to come, but they refused to come. So there is a connection there too. So I think it could have a double fulfillment. And then in Esther 3, so let's see. In Esther 3, we see it says, after these events, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite. So that could be a connection to, so I was wondering if we were seeing connections with Esther 3 to the Black Lives Matter people. And then so it says, because they were like promoted, and then, so God would be the one promoting, quote unquote, these Black Lives Matter people. And so I really think it has to do with the fact that God was bringing judgment on Trump. And so he was moving kind of the power and authority in our country onto the Black Lives Matter people to bring judgment onto Trump. Because like I said, that happened on the 120th day after the deal of the century. And okay, so then it says, the king advanced him and established his authority over all the princes who were with him. All the king's servants who were at the king's gate bowed down and paid homage to Haman, for the king had commanded concerning him. So I put in here, so it's kind of interesting that basically it's like the Black Lives Matter people are at the king's gate. It says they bowed down and paid homage to Haman. So Haman could, right here in this verse, could be George Floyd, because it was all about, they were making him out to be a great hero. And I wrote the fact that they were at the king's gate, it has a lot to do with that, they were causing damage in God's temple, which, America would be considered like God's temple. But I also wrote too that they were acting like God because they were judging the motives of people. Okay. So that's what I wrote about them. And then it says, but Mordecai neither bowed down nor paid homage. So Mordecai could be a picture of any of God's people, but it could also be the policeman, who dared to arrest blacks in this country. I mean, I really think that's why they don't like him. And the policemen really are just, God's servants to bring law and order to this country. And so the fact that they, the Black Lives Matter people don't like him showed that, they are God's enemies. The Black Lives Matter people, not the policemen. The policemen are God's servants. Okay. And then as Christians, we need to respect the authority that God puts in place, and Black Lives Matter does not do that. And so then it says, in the story, basically that Haman is filled with rage because Mordecai won't bow down. And then it says, but Haman disdained to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had told him who the people of Mordecai were. Therefore, Haman sought to destroy all the Jews. So that could be a prophetic picture of how the Black Lives Matter people want to get rid of all the policemen in the United States. And then, anyways, so it talks about, let's see, casting pure in the first month, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, all the way to the 12th month. So I don't think I really quite figured out how this fits in. But basically it might have something to do with the fact that, starting in the time of Obama, we had protests. And then basically now we're in the 12th month of these protests, which, the 12th always kind of connects to the end, so maybe this is the final month for them to protest. And be a problem for God's people. And then it says, then Haman said to King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered and dispersed among the peoples in all the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from those of other people, and they do not observe the king's laws. So it is not in the king's interest to let them remain. If it is pleasing to the king, let it be decreed that they be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who carry on the king's business to put into the king's treasuries. Okay, so this is very interesting because I think we're seeing the fulfillment of this with the Black Lives Matter people. It's basically like they're saying to Trump and to other people in this country, let's get rid of the policemen, okay, because they're not following the law. Okay, that's what they're claiming. Okay. And so then they're saying, well, let's take the police money and give it to other social programs. Because, so I want to say because they've done so well, the social programs in the last 50 years to make life better for the Black people. Okay, not. They have not made life better. in the last 50 years. Basically, they've spoiled the black people, and then now basically we have a whole bunch of spoiled people. And it hasn't made, like, Chicago is a very good example of, whatever democratic policies have been going on in Chicago, all it's done is just create it's basically like uh Hunger Games in Chicago. It's, they're shooting each other all the time. It's just a terrible situation. Okay. And then so then it says the king took his signet ring from his hand and gave it to Haman. And so what we saw is that Trump did something to appease the Black Lives Matter people. So he he made like it was some kind of it had something to do with police reform. And so Trump signed something to bring in some police reform. But the thing is that if you understand that the Black Lives Matter people are like terrorists, and you should not appease terrorists, because it really doesn't make things better, it makes worse. Okay. But the king said to Haman, the silver is yours, and the people also to do with them as you please. Trump didn't totally say that, because he still said, I want to keep the policemen. So then, okay. So letters were sent by couriers to all the king's provinces to destroy, to kill, to annihilate all the Jews. Okay, so we saw that they were trying to get, in all the states in the United States, they were trying to get rid of the policemen. Okay. So it was interesting that in this story it happens on the 13th day, because 13 is Obama's number of the 12th month. So, and I don't know, maybe something interesting happened on the 13th day of the protest. I didn't take a look at that, but maybe someday I will. And then it says the couriers went out impelled by the king's command while the decree was issued at the citadel in Susa. And while the king and Haman sat down to drink, the city of Susa was in confusion. So that is definitely a picture of America is in confusion right now. Okay. So, okay. And then in Esther 4, so let's see. I think I was going to skip this. I had ideas of this first fulfillment, and this was relating to, because I talked about this in one of my previous videos, where the first fulfillment of Esther 4 would connect to like Trump's people protesting. And then I did a second fulfillment where it connected to Black Lives Matter. So I'll talk about that. Okay, so then it says, when Mordecai learned all that had been done, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the midst of the city and wailed loudly and bitterly. Okay, so what I'm thinking is that this connects to, so I think we're backing up in time again, where, when it says Mordecai learned all that had been done, so what I think we have here is like Mordecai, could be a picture of the Black Lives Matter people. And so when they learned all that had been done with George Floyd, they tore their clothes, they put on sackcloth, they went out into the midst of the city, they wailed loudly and bitterly. We saw that happening, okay? And then it says he went as far as the king's gate, for no one was to enter the king's gate clothed in sackcloth. Okay, so they tried to go, they went up to the White House, but they didn't, fortunately they were stopped before they went into the White House. When they were trying to do graffiti and stuff in Washington, D.C., and I think they put a little bit of a stop to that, even though there was still a lot of damage. And then it says, in each and every province where the command and decree of the king came, there was great mourning among the Jews. So wherever the story about George Floyd came, and this actually happened around the world, there was great mourning among these rioters, fasting, weeping, wailing. Many lay on sackcloth and ashes. Basically, there was rioting and looting. Just all around the world. It was just craziness. Okay. And then it says, Esther's maidens and her eunuchs came and told her, and the queen writhed in great anguish. Okay, so what we see happening is that these are birth pangs for God's people. So Esther would be a picture of God's people. And so what we're seeing is kind of this picture of Rachel weeping for her children, weeping for the damage and destruction in America. And then it says, and she sent garments to clothe Mordecai, that he might remove the sackcloth from him, but he did not accept them. So what we have is some people in America are trying to appease the rioters by abolishing the police, kneeling, etc. Okay, so what I'm saying is that is the great falling away. Okay, because we're seeing Christians, fall, just a bunch of organizations and businesses everybody's all trying to appease Black Lives Matter people. Okay, so I definitely think it's the great falling away. And then it says, Esther summoned Hatak from the king's eunuch, whom the king had appointed to attend her, and ordered him to go to Mordecai to learn what this was and why it was. So actually it's kind of interesting because the wording of this, to learn what this was and why it was, connects to the story of Rebecca when she has her twins. They're fighting in her womb. Okay, so I think there's a connection to that story. So Esther would be like, maybe trying to find out from God, or trying to find out from other prophecy teachers what's going on. So that could be partly what's happening in the story. But I also said too, maybe that, Esther is trying to get the media to find out what's going on. So that was one thought that I had. But, now that I read it, I think it connects more to the story of Rebecca going, why are these two twins fighting in my womb? And that's where God says there's two nations in your womb. So basically it's the birth pangs. Okay. And so then it says, Hatak went out to Mordecai to the city square in front of the king's gate. Mordecai told him all that had happened to him and the exact amount of money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasury for the destruction of the Jews. He also gave him a copy of the text of the edict which had been issued in Susa for their destruction, that he might show Esther and inform her, and to order her to go into the king to employ his favor and to plead with him for her people. Hatak came back and related Mordecai's words to Esther. So what's kind of interesting is that we're seeing like the media is just going way overboard to get information dispatched to continue the protest. So the media are definitely part of the problem. And then what we see too, one of the things I wanted to talk about was, like, when they had George Floyd's funeral, it was like, in like 3 different cities, and then in the last city there was a viewing, and then there was a funeral, and so it just gets dragged on and on and on. And it's interesting because there's a connection to the Palestinians' behavior, okay, because they do the exact same thing. When someone, any of the Palestinians get killed, then they'll just drag, have the, take the body through the city, and just they're weeping and wailing and crying, and, just drama, because they're trying to get everyone to feel sorry for them. And then they're trying to make, the Palestinians are trying to make, the Israelis look bad, and then Black Lives Matter is trying to make Americans look bad. So very interesting, the connection, between those two groups of people. Where Ecclesiastic says there's nothing new under the sun, there's nothing new under the sun. Okay, God's enemies always act the same way, no matter what country they're in. So that's what we see going on. And then, so I put in this verse from Mark 13, and it says, And then if anyone says to you, behold, here is the Christ, or behold, he is there, do not believe him, for false Christs and false prophets will arise and will show signs and wonders in order to lead astray a possible elect. So that, I definitely believe that's what's happening with this BLM movement, is they're trying to lead astray the elect. Okay. They're trying to, basically, they're not saying like, okay, here we are, here's Jesus. But what they're doing is they're acting like Jesus, in that they're saying, we understand the hearts of people and we understand who needs to be punished. So you need to follow us. Okay. And you need to, we understand that you're racist and you need to repent. That's basically what they're saying. It's a messianic message. The problem is that they're a false Messiah, okay? Because that's not the problem in America, okay? And that's not the problem with the riots, is not that there's systemic racism in America. The problem with the rioting is that there is a whole group of people that hate God, hate America, hate Israel because they're God's enemies. That's the bottom line. And then it says, okay, in Isaiah 8, it says, for thus the Lord spoke to me with mighty power and instructed me not to walk in the way of this people, saying, you are not to say it is a conspiracy in regard to all that this people call a conspiracy, and you are not to fear what they fear or be in dread of it. Okay. So, so don't follow them. Okay. It is not a systemic racism problem. Okay. That's the conspiracy that they're calling. That's their conspiracy theory. Okay. That the problem in America is systemic racism. It's not a problem. That's not the problem. Okay. So the book of Esther, and that's not to say that there's not some people that are racist, on the police force, but it's not a systemic thing. I highly recommend like some of Dennis Prager University videos on the subject. He's got some good information about that. And the thing is too, like I said, they were acting kind of like Jesus, like they could read people's heart. With the George Floyd death, the thing is like, how did they know it's racism? It could have just been, the guy could have just been a violent guy. There's a million reasons why the guy could have done what he did, and nobody can get into somebody's head. Jesus is the only one that can get into somebody's head and read their hearts. So that's why I said they're acting like, they're acting like a Messiah. They act like they can read people's hearts and know their motivations. And so this is really dangerous, slippery stuff when you start, treading in, where angels fear to tread. Okay, so then in Esther 4, so then it says, Esther spoke to Hattak and ordered him to reply to Mordecai. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that for any man or woman who comes to the king to the inner court who is not summoned, he has but one law, that he be put to death, unless the king holds out to him the golden scepter, so that he may live. And I have not been summoned to come to the king for these 30 days. They related Esther's words to Mordecai. So I'm not totally sure what this connects to. But what we have is, actually what I kind of think it connects to is that for 30 days, it connects to the 3 different time frames. And so basically during these 3 different time frames, the shutdown, Trump's people protesting, Black Lives Matter people rioting, that God was not summoning his people. So it's interesting. So it says, for any man or woman who comes to the king to the inner quarters not summoned, he has one law, that he be put to death. And so I think what we're seeing here is that so like if we just, okay, so I put 30 days of opening in the country, but I think if we just look at the 30 days of the Black Lives Matter people, um, basically they're trying to go to the inner court, like I said, where angels fear to tread. And so God says when you try to do that there's one law, that you be put to death. Okay. Because basically they're not following God, they're rebellious. I mean, God says, vengeance is mine, I will repay. We need to leave justice into the hands of God, and they're not doing that. So then it says, Mordecai told them to reply to Esther, do not imagine that you in the king's palace can escape any more than all the Jews. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, and you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not attained royalty for such a time as this. So this could be a picture of so I had like 3 different ideas from these verses. Basically, one of them is that that I kind of think that maybe God is calling this people to remain silent at this time. And so that if we do remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for God's people from another place. Okay. Because really we just need to, wait on God to send the Messiah. But then I also think with these verses that they could connect to Black Lives Matter are trying to force God's people to protest with them. And I actually have seen, some of the posters of the protesters where they're saying like white silence is something death or something like that, and so they're coming against us for being silent. Anyway, so then I also talked about, because we've had silence from different people. So another thing too is that so actually this could be a picture of like this could be maybe like the Messiah talking to Trump, saying, do not imagine that you in the king's palace, which would be the White House, can escape any more than all of God's people. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for God's people from another place, and you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not attained royalty for such a time as this. So that does connect to, so basically if Trump remains silent, which is what he did not send the National Guard to protect the cities. He did not send, he took troops out of Syria, while he was president, and, and didn't protect the Jewish people. And so what is going to happen is that him and his father's house will perish, okay? Because he didn't take advantage of the power that he had as president to protect God's people. So anyways, and then I wrote too that we also see like God kind of remaining silent during this time. I'm just kind of talking about silence here. Because what we read in, I think this is in a psalm where it says, God says, I remain silent. And so then the people thought I was just like them. Okay. And so the fact that right now God hasn't done anything to stop the protesters are getting arrogant, thinking, that God agrees with them, but they don't realize that sudden destruction is coming, that the Messiah is going to come, and, they're going to be judged. So that's silence. Okay, then it says, Esther told him the reply to Mordecai, go, assemble all the Jews who are found in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my maidens will also fast in the same way. So Jews fast for 3 days. Esther's maidens fast for 3 days. And so I think that could connect to the 3 days, the three time frames of the 40-day shutdown, the 30 days, and 30 days. Okay, 30 days of protesting followed by 30 days of rioting. And so what's kind of interesting is that we've had, I mean, so in Israel too, they had a shutdown too. And so, um, so anyways, that's what I'm thinking is a possibility. But I also kind of think this could connect to that, like when Israel gets attacked, so it says the Jews will not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I think that connects for that actually connects to the two witnesses where they get killed and people look at their dead bodies for 3.5 days. So that could connect to that, because then it says, I and my maidens also will fast in the same way. And so that could connect to when Israel gets attacked, the Christians in America are going to be like Rachel weeping for her children. Okay. And so then they will fast for the 3 days that the Jewish people, are killed, because it's going to be like a second Holocaust. Okay. And then it says, and thus I will go into the king, which is not according to the law, and if I perish, I perish. But I also wrote that this, when she says, I will go into the king, which is not according to law, and if I perish, I perish. That actually could be a picture of, something that Iran is saying, because, I think, because it talks about Esther going to the king on the third day. And, so that's what I think is going to happen at the end of these three time frames. Then we're going to see Israel get attacked. Okay. So then, so Esther would connect to Iran going on the third day, to attack Israel. But then we also see with Esther, it's got a double fulfillment. It also connects to Esther going to the king, which would be Esther going to the Messiah. Okay, so let's talk about Babylon. Okay. Because that's what the video is about. So let's talk about it. Okay, so this is from Revelation 17, and it says, Then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and spoke with me, saying, Come here, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth committed acts of immorality, and those who dwell on the earth were made drunk with the wine of her immorality. And he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, full of blasphemous names, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was clothed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a gold cup full of abominations and of the unclean things of her immorality. And on her forehead a name was written, a mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the witnesses of Jesus. When I saw her, I wondered greatly, and the angel said to me, Why do you wonder? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. The beast that you saw was, and is not, and is about to come up out of the abyss and go to destruction. And those who dwell on the earth, whose name has not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will wonder when they see the beast that he was, and is not, and will come. Okay, so first I wanted to comment about the 7 angels with the 7 bowls. See how that connects to the 7 messianic figures in the story of Esther? So kind of interesting. And so we might not understand that until we see who Jesus really is. So just wanted to point that out. So 7 could be it's connected to completion. I think the number 7 would be connected to Jesus, but it's also connected to the 7 churches, because there's 7 angels connected to the 7 churches. Okay, and then it says, okay, so I'll show you the harlot, the judgment of the harlot who sits on many waters. And so what I propose is that the harlot is Trump. And so what it talks about the harlot is that the harlot is sitting on a scarlet beast, okay? And so I propose that the scarlet beast is Obama. And so, okay, so when it says the woman is sitting on the scarlet beast, I could see 2 possible fulfillments. One is that right now we have basically like Trump's being carried around by the Black Lives Movement, the BLM people. So that's one possible fulfillment. But I also think that Trump does behavior that's similar to Obama, so that, so that would also connect to sitting on the scarlet beast. Okay, so let's see what it says about the scarlet beast, okay, which I said is Obama. And so the beast it's full of blasphemous names. It has 7 heads and 10 horns, okay? So we definitely see with the Black Lives, and so maybe the Scarlet Beast isn't just Obama, but it includes the Black Lives Matter people. Because then, we see the blasphemy that comes out of the Black Lives Matter people toward God's people, and toward America and all that kind of stuff. And then the 7 heads, so there's 7 churches, but there's also, I think we read about the 7 heads later. But, and we talk about the 10 horns later too, so I'll wait till we get to that slide. And then it says the woman was clothed in purple and scarlet. Okay, so scarlet, you see kind of a connection to like the scarlet letter. So basically like Trump has blood on his hands, okay? And then it says, and was adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls. Okay, so that connects to God's people, okay? Gold would be the Jewish people, the precious stones and pearls, would be kind of like the riches of God in this country, like kind of the riches in the temple. And then Trump has in his hand a gold cup full of abominations. And so I think that connects to the deal of the century because, God talks about the abomination that causes desolation. So that the deal of the century is going to cause desolation in Israel. Okay. And it's causing right now desolation in America too, because we're suffering judgment because of it. Okay. And then it says, and then on her forehead a name was written, a mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. So what I thought was interesting is that you have Trump's people wear the MAGA hats, the Make America Great Again hats. And so it's interesting that Babylon's called Babylon the Great, okay? And then, and then it says the woman was drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the witnesses of Jesus. So Trump's going to cause the death of America and the death of Israel to make a name for himself. Okay, so we're seeing right now the death of America, okay? Because Rachel, when she was when she was giving birth, she dies, okay? And so that's a picture of America dying. Okay, and then when I saw her, I wondered greatly, and the angel said, why do you wonder? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her. Okay. So the wondering connects to when Mary is going to give birth to Jesus. She ponders, a lot of stuff that's going on. Rebecca with the twins, she's wondering why, the twins are fighting within her wound. Okay. And then it says, the beast that you saw was and is not and is about to come up out of the abyss and go to destruction. Okay, so that is Trump. Okay, he was president, and then for a time while Trump was president, he was not president, but he's about to come up out of the abyss. And actually, I think that happened yesterday on the 23rd. And then he's going to go to destruction. Okay, because yesterday Obama on the 23rd, which is his number, June 23rd, he officially joined the Biden campaign to support Biden running for president. Okay, so I mean, I was looking for that, and so I have a slide in here where I mentioned that, and it happened yesterday. So, okay, so then it says those who dwell on the earth will wonder when they see the beast that he was and is not and will come. Okay, so then it says, here's the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. Okay, so that's a connection to, okay, so it's kind of interesting. So the 7 heads aren't really on the beast. Well, anyways, the woman is sitting on the 7 heads. So all kind of interesting. But that's a connection to Trump and the 7 churches, and just how we see that, Trump tries to appease the 7 churches, the evangelicals in America, and, and he's definitely making decisions that affect the churches in America. And then it says there are 7 kings. So what's interesting about that is that I think we've had 7 presidents, and I talk about that in one of my other videos, starting with Reagan, and then it says 5 have fallen, so they're no longer president. One that's Trump, and then the other, and I think what that has to do is like it's a 40-year time frame of presidents. So basically like the 40 last years of America, the end of the time of the Gentiles. And then, or the 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, you might say, or something. And so one that's Trump, and then the other has not yet come, and when he comes, he must remain a little while. Okay, so that could connect to both Messiah, and then, but also could connect to Obama, because he's just going to have a short little while, too, to do his destruction. And then, we're going to see Jesus for 7 days, and then Jesus is going to go up on the mountain for like 40 days. And then come back and, and then get rid of his enemies. So the beast which was and is not is himself also an 8th and is of the 7, and he goes to destruction. So Obama was the 6th president, and then he's going to be the 8th. It says he's also an 8th because I think Messiah is also an 8th too. I think that's why when we read stories, we have twin stories, okay? Because they're both, the 8th, like, like, I don't know how that works, but you have Messiah and Obama are like both the leaders that follow Trump. Okay, and then it says the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings. Okay, that connects to the 10 in the wilderness who do not have faith. Okay, when they sent the 12 spies, 10 of them don't have faith and say bad things about the land. And then there's 2 that have faith, okay, out of the 12 spies that they sent, okay. And then, so it says about these 10 kings, they have not yet received a kingdom, but they receive authority as kings with the beast from 1 hour, okay. Where's it go? Okay, so that's the Black Lives Matter people. The 10 horns are the Black Lives Matter people. So the day of judgment is the coronavirus, and then the hour of judgment is the riots, okay? And then it says the 10 horns have one purpose, and they give their power and authority to the beast. So I don't think we haven't seen that yet, okay? So we haven't seen how, we haven't seen a shift from would they take their power and authority and give it to Obama. We haven't seen that yet, okay? And then it says these will wage war against the Lamb, And the Lamb will overcome him because he is Lord of Lords and King of Kings, and those who are with him are the called and chosen and faithful. Okay, so two things. Rachel, so Rachel weeping for her children, Rachel means lamb. Okay, so when it says these, the 10 horns will wage war against the Lamb, that's Black Lives Matter waging war against God's people in this country. Okay, and that's why God has to cut the time short, because otherwise none of his people will survive. Okay, but they also wage war against, then it says the Lamb, which would be the Messiah, will overcome him because he is Lord of Lords and King of Kings, and those who are with him are the called and chosen and faithful. And he said to me, the waters which you saw where the harlot sits are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. So I think that could be a picture of America mixing with the nations. Because that's part of the problem of the downfall of America, is that we mixed with the nations rather than, and basically we see Trump, kind of part of this too, coming out of the, just the last 40 years in this country. We haven't really been sticking to Christianity. We've been mixing with the nations. And then it says, the 10 horns which you saw in the beast, they will hate the harlot, so they hate Trump, and they will make her desolate and naked, and will eat her flesh, and will burn her up with fire. So they hate Trump, and they hate America. Okay, so they're trying to make it desolate and naked, and eating her flesh, and burning her up with fire. Okay, so then it says, for God has put it in their hearts to execute his purpose by having a common purpose, and by giving their kingdom to the beast until the words of God will be fulfilled. The woman, Trump, who you saw, is the great city, which reigns over the kings of the earth. Okay. So there's a connection with Trump. Trump's the president, so a connection with the great city, being America, basically. And I just wrote, isn't it interesting that BLM is like attacking the cities? Okay. Okay, and then it says, after these things I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was illumined with his glory. And he cried out with a mighty voice, saying, fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling place of demons and a prison of every unclean spirit. And a prison of every unclean and hateful bird. For all the nations have drunk of the wine of the passion of her immorality, and the kings of the earth have committed acts of immorality with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich by the wealth of her sensuality. I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, so that you will not participate in her sins and receive of her plagues. For her sins have piled up as high as heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Pay her back even as she has paid, and give back to her double according to her deeds. In the cup which she has mix twice as much for her. To the degree that she glorified herself and lived sensuously, to the same degree give her torment and mourning. For she says in her heart, I sit as a queen, and I am not a widow, and will never see mourning. For this reason, in one day her plagues will come, pestilence and mourning and famine, and she will be burned up with fire. For the Lord God who judges her is strong. And the kings of the earth who committed acts of immorality and lived sensuously with her will weep and lament over her when they see the smoke of her burning, standing at a distance because of the fear of her torment, saying, woe, woe, the great city Babylon, the strong city, for in 1 hour your judgment has come. Okay, so what we see is fallen is Babylon the Great. Okay, it says she has become a dwelling place of demons and a prison of every unclean spirit and a prison of every unclean and hateful bird. And, so basically, like the birds, eat the flesh. And so that's what we're seeing with the Black Lives Matter people. Okay, and it's definitely a demonic movement. Okay, so unclean spirits in this country. And then it says, for all the nations have drunk of the wine of the passion of her immorality. So we see protests happening in other cities too around the world. Okay, and then it says, the kings of the earth have committed acts of immorality with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich by the wealth of her sensuality. So we have two groups of people. We have like the Black Lives Matter people committed acts of immorality, and then we have the merchants have become rich by the wealth of her sensuality. Because Babylon, the description of Babylon is, definitely a country that buys or sells. And so that would be connected to Trump and his people because he's a businessman, okay? And then it says, I've heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, so that you will not participate in her sins and receive of her plagues, okay? So, and then it's interesting too that it says, pay her back and give back to her double, okay? So what we see is, it says, fallen is Babylon the Great, okay? So Trump being like Babylon, basically he's going to cause the two pillars of God's kingdom to fall. So he's going to cause, because of his behavior, he's causing America to fall right now, and then we're going to see Israel fall, the two pillars, okay? And so then, we're going to pay him back twice because he has this like double, he caused this two calamities basically to the two different countries of God. So not good. Okay, and then it's interesting that, this Babylon says, I sit as a queen and I am not a widow and will never see mourning. So we see a connection to Queen Vashti there. And then also saying I am not a widow would be like saying, you don't believe that, you don't recognize that God, has died in your country and that you're a widow. And so they're not recognizing that they're missing God or they're missing the Messiah. Trump's not recognizing that. He says, I'm a queen, And then it says, so for this reason, in one day her plagues will come, pestilence and mourning and famine. So that's the coronavirus. And then it says, for she will be burned up with fire. So that's the rioters. And then it says, the kings of the earth will weep and lament over her when they see the smoke of her burning, standing at a distance, saying, woe, woe, the great city Babylon, the strong city, for in 1 hour your judgment has come. So the 1 hour would be the riots. And so we see that people are like staying out of the cities while the rioting is happening. And also like the shopkeepers, because it talks about, the merchants of the earth, they, obviously, and it says, and the merchants of the earth weep and mourn over her because no one buys their cargoes anymore. And I won't read the whole list of cargoes. The fruit you longed for has gone from you, and all the things that were luxurious and splendid have passed away from you, and men will no longer find them. The merchants of these things who became rich from her will stand at a distance because of the fear of her torment, weeping and mourning, saying, woe, woe, the great city. She was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls. Okay, so God's kind of repeating himself here. For in 1 hour such great wealth has been laid waste. So basically we have the merchants standing at a distance because of the fear of her torment. So we have, Trump is not stopping the looting. He kind of stayed in his bunker in Washington, D.C. And no one, and there's some people that are trying to put a stop to it. But like, it's kind of interesting because, a lot, like a big percentage of some of the people in politics in this country are standing at a distance and not stopping the looting. And then it says, a strong angel took up a stone like a great millstone and threw it into the sea, saying, so will Babylon, the great city, be thrown down with violence and not be found any longer. And then it talks about how the sound of harpists, musicians, flute players, trumpeters will not be heard in you any longer. And then it says, the voice of a bridegroom and bride will not be heard in you any longer. And then it says, in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and all of who had been slain on the earth. Okay. So what we see here is the bridegroom and the bride are no longer in Babylon. So that's God's people. God says to his people, what does he say? Where is that? Come out of her, my people. And so that's what they do. And so, the bridegroom and the bride are no longer in Babylon. Or Jesus is going to help them get out of Babylon. And um, and then it says, in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all who've been slain on the earth. So like I said, Trump causes the downfall of both America and Israel. And so he's got the blood of Christians on his hand and the blood of Jewish people on his hands. Excuse me for a second here. And then what's going to happen with these verses is we're going to see a repeat of like this 1 hour of judgment in Israel, so so then that would be the double falling. Okay, America's gonna fall, Israel's gonna fall. Okay, and with with Israel, I really think it is gonna be like, it's the 1 hour is gonna be more actual literal hour. In America, it's been 30 days. Okay, so what we see is this time frame of time, times, and half a time. I see a connection with that phrase to the 1335 days. And God says you're blessed if you could wait till the end of if you can wait till the 1335 days. Okay. And so what I think is possible is that the time connects to the 1, the times connects to the 3, and the 5, the half a time connects to the 5 of 1335. And so what I think is possible is that the 1 is the coronavirus shutdown. And then the times would be these 2 time frames of 30 days. Where the first 30 days was Trump's people protesting, and that happened April 26th through Memorial Day. And then the second 3 is 30 days of Obama's people writing. Okay, and so that was May 26th, and then today is the 30th day. So that's why I'm expecting something to happen really soon. Okay. And then the half the time connects to 5, and so I think 5 definitely connects to the Messiah. It's the number for Judah, but it also can be translated to as the dividing of time. So I think it's a connection to God making a division between the people of Egypt and his people. Okay, his enemies, dividing between his enemies and his people. Okay, so just like in Egypt, we're going to be like in the land of Goshen, protected by God from, and basically this is while indignation runs its course. God's people are going to be in hiding, and so he's going to make a division. He's going to protect us. Okay. And so we see the time frame of time, times, and half a time. In Daniel 12:7, there's a river with 2 banks, and there's a messianic figure in linen above the river talking about the times, and half a time. So that's definitely a picture of Jesus. The river with the 2 banks, I think, is a picture of, you got Trump and his people on one side and Obama and his people on the other side of the river. Okay. And then in Revelation 12, it says, and when the dragon saw that he was thrown down to the earth, he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male. But the 2 wings of the great eagle were given to the woman so that she could fly into the wilderness to her place, where she was nourished for time, times, and half a time from the presence of the serpent. Okay, so it talks about the dragon, which I said could be a picture of Obama or a picture of his people. And then it says when he was thrown down to earth, he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male. Okay, so I wrote Trump here because I think Trump could be the male that the woman gave birth to. Um, but it also could be Messiah. Um, so this, I mean, it's kind of interesting because I think there's two time frames that could be fulfilled in these verses. One, when Trump lost his power, he was thrown down to the earth, but he still persecuted, um, America for voting in Trump, but then what we're going to see is when, God allows Obama to have power again, then he's going to persecute. I mean, basically, it's going to be the people that are left behind, after the Messiah is birthed. Okay. So, like I said, I think we're going to see a double fulfillment. And then what's interesting, it says the two wings of the great eagle were given to the woman so that she could fly into the wilderness where she was nourished for times, and half a time from the presence of the serpent. It's interesting that there's two wings, because that could connect to the, the river with the two banks, I mean, could connect to, like I said, the two pillars, where you have Israel on one side and America on the other. But also, and so the two wings would be like, God helping his people while we're, seeing the falling of America and the falling of Israel. So, but it all, it's interesting because there was also kind of a connection to the 2 times of 30 days too. So, okay, and so we see also in the cupbearer and the baker, so I won't read the story, but this is okay, well, maybe I will. Okay, then it came about after these things, the cupbearer and the baker for the king of Egypt offended their lord, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was furious with his 2 officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. So the chief cupbearer and the chief baker could be Trump and Netanyahu, and or it could also be America and Israel. So he put them in confinement in the house of the captain of the bodyguard in the jail, the same place where Joseph was imprisoned. Okay. So Joseph could be Obama because, Obama was imprisoned for a time, like sort of kind of in a type of prison. So we have like Trump and Netanyahu basically kind of losing their power because of the deal of the century. But we also saw, America and Israel, they were put in confinement and shut down with the coronavirus, and that was judgment from God. So just a lot of rich, prophecy is so rich because you could get so many different things out of one sentence in prophecy. Okay, and then it says the captain of the bodyguard put Joseph in charge of them, and he took care of them, and they were in confinement for some time. So, so here Joseph could be Trump in charge of, in charge of America. And then it says the cupbearer and the baker for the king of Egypt, who were confined in jail, both had a dream the same night, each man with his own dream and each dream with his own interpretation. Okay, so that could be a picture of the deal of the century because both Trump and Netanyahu were dreaming if they thought they would have peace with Israel's enemies. And then it says, when Joseph came to them in the morning and observed them, behold, they were dejected. And so then God sent judgment because of the coronavirus. Okay. And then he asked Pharaoh's officials who were with him in confinement in his master's house, why are your faces so sad today? Then they said to him, we have had a dream and there is no one to interpret it. Then Joseph said to them, do not interpretations belong to God? Tell it to me, please. Okay, so here Joseph is a messianic figure interpreting dreams. Okay. So the chief cupbearer told this dream to Joseph and said to him, in my dream, behold, there was a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches, and as it was budding, its blossoms came out, and its clusters produced ripe grapes. Then Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, so I took the grapes and squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. Then Joseph said to him, this is the interpretation. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 more days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office. And you will put Pharaoh's cup into his hand according to your former custom when you were his cupbearer. Only keep me in mind when it goes well with you. And please do me a kindness by mentioning me to Pharaoh and get me out of this house, for I was in fact kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing that they should have put me into the dungeon. So if we have the chief cupbearer being Obama, so he sees a vine in front of him, and the vine has 3 branches. And so then as it was budding, it had buds, blossoms, and clusters. Okay. So what I think is the buds are Trump's people, the blossoms are Messiah's people, the ripe grapes are Obama's people. Okay. And then, because what we're seeing is the tares growing up, God's people and the tares growing up. They're blossoming. Okay. And so what we have is the chief cupbearer says, now Pharaoh's cup was in my hand. So that would be a picture of the cup of leadership. Okay, so the power, but it also could be a picture of the cup of wrath, God's wrath. And so what happened is power shifted to Obama's people. Okay. And then it said, I took the grapes and squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. So that could be a picture of, persecution of the Christians in America. But also a picture of so taking the grapes and squeezing them into Pharaoh's cup could also be a picture of how Black Lives Matter have been trying to get people in this country to become like them. Okay. And then so Joseph said the 3 branches are 3 days. So that could connect to the 30 days, until, it could connect to a lot of things. 3 days could connect to the 666. And then it says, within 3 more days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to the office. And so that could connect to the 3 time frames. So 666, 3 time frames, and then, and then it says Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office. So kind of so we're at the end of the second 30 days, and then it says Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office. So what we have is, Obama right now has joined, he's back in politics, basically. And then it says you will put Pharaoh's cup into his hand according to your formal custom when you're his cupbearer. So I think we're going to see Obama returned into power. And then it's interesting because Joseph says, keep me in mind when it goes well with you, and please do me a kindness by mentioning me to Pharaoh and get me out of this house. But what we have is the cupbearer forgets Joseph. And so we're going to, no shocker, we're going to see Obama forget about the Messiah. Okay, basically. Okay, and forget about Israel too, maybe. And then it says, when the chief baker saw that he interpreted favorably, he said to Joseph, I also saw my dream, and there were 3 baskets of white bread on my head. In the top basket there were some of all sorts of baked food for Pharaoh, and the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head. Then Joseph answered and said, this is the interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 more days, Pharaoh will lift up your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat your flesh off of you. Thus it came about on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast for all his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among the servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his office, and he put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker just as Joseph had interpreted to him. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. So is the 3 days, so I think this could be a picture of Trump. It also could be a picture of Netanyahu. The chief baker could either be Trump or Netanyahu. Because what's interesting is that the chief baker has 3 baskets on the head, so the 3 baskets connect to the 666. So what I'm wondering is, and the 3 days could connect to the 40 30 days time frame, but it also could connect to 666. So I'm wondering if the first third day is May 26th, could be Pharaoh's birthday, and that was the birth of the rioting, the 10 horns. The second third day, so I wrote June 22nd would be like Obama's birthday, but then I'm wondering if June 24th could be the birth of the Messiah. Or, I don't know if we got to wait like 3 more days, which could get us to the 27th, which is a Sabbath, so maybe that could be the birth of the Messiah. I'm not really sure. So that's that story. Okay. So we'll just have to see how it plays out. So I think we've had, kind of the birthday of Obama. I mean, I think the birds eating the bread out of the basket is a picture of Israel getting attacked. So, basically that's what we're waiting on, is that we're going to see, we've seen Obama return. Now we need to see the Israel get attacked, and then the birthing of the Messiah, the final birthing of Messiah. Okay, so Daniel 7 talks about 4 beasts, and so just wanted to mention these because we have the lion with the eagle's wings, who had its wings plucked, and it stands on 2 feet. So I think that could connect to the lion, connects to the tribe of Judah, so that could connect to Netanyahu. But then, like, the wings are plucked and stands on 2 feet. So I think that could connect to the fact that we have Netanyahu and Gantz, kind of formed this unity government or whatever in Israel, so 2 different guys in the leadership of Israel. And then the fact that their wings are plucked, that could be a picture of they're not waiting for the Messiah to give them the land. They're trying to annex it, and make a name for themselves. I mean, especially Netanyahu. And then we have the bear with the 3 ribs in its mouth. I think that connects to Trump with the 666. Then we have the leopard with the 4 wings. Okay, so that connects to Obama. A leopard has black and brown spots on a white background. So that connects to the Black Lives Matter people with this black, brown, white issue. What's interesting too is there's a connection with the Black Panthers to the Black Lives Matter people. And a Black Panther is actually a black leopard. So I thought that was interesting. The 4 wings also too connects to the 4 corners of the world. But there's 4 winds too in scripture. So I think there might be 4 like major people that are connected with Obama. So, I mean, besides the fact that I think the 4 corners is because we've seen, these rioters in the 4 corners of the world. But I also think with Obama, I think there's 4 winds. I think it's like maybe Obama, Hillary Clinton, John Kerry, and the Pope. But also now, I don't know, maybe with Biden, maybe Kerry's out and Biden's in, so something like that. I think there's 4 main people like that connected to Obama. And then the 4th beast has the 10 horns, so that's the Black Lives Matter rioters, that I talked about. Daniel 7:8 says, while I was contemplating the horns, behold, another horn, a little one, came up among them. And 3 of the first horns were pulled out by the roots before it. And behold, this horn possessed eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth uttering great boast. Okay, so while Trump is busy with the riots in America, then Iran and others can attack Israel. So I think that's the little horn could be Iran. Okay, because it talks about this little horn possesses eyes like the eyes of a man and a mouth uttering great boast. And so we've seen with Iran, this leader of Iran has constantly boasted about, he's going to attack Israel. And then when it says he has the eyes of a man, it's like his eyes are on the Jewish people, because he hates the Jewish people and wants to get rid of them. And so while Trump is busy with the riots in America, Iran and others can attack Israel. And this little horn is going to subdue 3 kings. And so, so I wrote Gantz, Netanyahu, and Trump, and actually I'm wondering if it's Gantz, Netanyahu, and Rivlin. Okay, so I just had that thought today. But the 3 kings are connected to, or 3 of the horns. Yeah, so the 3 horns are connected to, it's connected to Daniel's 3 friends that get thrown into the fiery furnace. Okay, so that's that's a story of Israel getting attacked. Okay, so okay, so just in case you didn't think we were fulfilling prophecy, we are fulfilling prophecy left and right, because now we've seen we're in the middle of the 4th beast, and now we're just waiting for this little horn to pop up. Okay, and so then, so day 120 was May 26th when the ride started. On the 3rd day, oh, okay, I don't know why I left this in there. June 14th was Trump's birthday. Let's see. Oh, well, it was just interesting on his birthday. It was the 50th day after 426. So the reason why I thought that was interesting is I got this picture on the right here of the Trump Tower in New York City. There was a fire. I don't remember what year this was. And somebody died in this fire. But you see kind of that 9/11 picture with the, like the fire on the right and the fire on the left. The fire was on the 50th floor of the tower. So I definitely think God was sending a message with this picture. It also too, there's a connection with this picture to the Back to the Future tire treads. And so you could take a look at that video. So I thought it was interesting that on June 14th, Trump's birthday, it was the 50th day after 426. The 50th day after the country opened up. It was 1 month after May 14th. It was 8 months and 8 days after October 7th, which was the day that Trump removed the troops from Syria. It was also the 7th year of Iran's president. So I'm kind of wondering if there was maybe a shifting on June 14th. The 14th is kind of like the Passover lamb. And then it's interesting that we've had, so then the next day would be the 15th. And so June 15th to 21st could have been some type of feast or time frame, because we see that time frame in God's scripture a lot, the 15th to the 21st. And then what we would have, so that would be like 7 days, and then we would have like an 8th day on the 21st, on the 22nd, a 9th day on the 23rd, a 10th day today. I don't know if we're following this time frame. But you could also count like June 22nd could be 8-1, June 23rd could be 8-2, June 24th could be 8-3. So that connects to 888. So I'm not really sure. We just have to see how things get fulfilled. But the 8th day, we're definitely in an 8th day, because, God talks about like a solemn assembly on the 8th day. So we're out of our Feast of Booths, and now we're like in the 8th day. And we're awaiting the 9th day, which is like Simchat Torah. Okay. And so it's kind of interesting. I think what we've seen yesterday was kind of like the 9th day of Obama, because he came back yesterday, and now we're waiting like the 9th day of the Messiah. Anyways, so I thought it was interesting because Miriam was quarantined for 7 days. So I don't know if the 15th to the 21st was like kind of like a quarantine period for Trump. Not really sure. He didn't stay home. He didn't wear a mask. So not really sure. But what's interesting too, it could have been the start of the 3rd Passover. We didn't see anything happen on the 2nd Passover, like connected to the Messiah anyway. So anyways, okay, so Babylon is fallen. So these are the verses that talk about that. And so I saw another angel flying in mid-heaven, having an eternal gospel to preach to those who live on the earth, and to every nation, tribe, and tongue, and people. And he said with a loud voice, Fear God and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come. Worship him who made the heaven and the earth and the sea and the springs of waters. And another angel, a second one, followed, saying, Fallen is Babylon the Great. She was made all the nations drink of the wine of the passion of her immorality. Then another angel, a third one, followed them, saying with a loud voice, If anyone worships the beast and his image and receives a mark on his forehead or on his hand, he also will drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is mixed in full strength in the cup of his anger, and he will be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever, and they have no rest, day and night, those who worship the beast and his image, and whoever receives the mark of his name. Here is the perseverance of the saints who keep the commandments of God in their faith in Jesus. So this is the passage where we hear about fallen is Babylon the Great. And so I talk about the two pillars connecting to the two falls of Babylon. And so we're on the one side where America has fallen, and now we're awaiting the falling of Israel. So that's the two sides. And then it's interesting that the blaze is on the 50th floor, because then, I think that's when we move into the 5 of the 1 through 3, 5, which is a connection to the Messiah. Okay. Oh, so then this is the story of Samson. And I won't read it because I read it in my other video. But what we see with Samson is he grasps the two middle pillars on which the house rested and braced himself against them, the one with his right hand and the other with his left. And Samson said, Let me die with the Philistines. And he bent with all his might so that the house fell on the lords and all the people who were in it. So the dead whom he killed at his death were more than those whom he had killed in his life. And so I believe Samson is a picture of Trump. So basically, Trump ends up pulling down the two pillars of God. He ends up pulling down America, and he ends up pulling down Israel. And so those would be the fires on the two sides. Okay. And it's interesting, it talks about that it's, where Samson ends up killing more at his death than he killed in his life. And so I think that's a picture of Trump, where since he didn't use America's military to protect both America and Israel, that's the picture that God's trying to paint. Because Trump didn't want to use the military. He was the sanction guy, okay? He didn't want to use the military. But basically now we're in a state in the world right now where we have a bunch of brutal dictators with, like Iran, has nuclear weapons. It's a dangerous place right now. Very dangerous for Israel right now, because Iran has way too much power. And I mean, Iran's not afraid of America because Trump really, he's all talk and not much action. So the dates, 120th day after the deal of the century was May 26th. That's when the riots started. The 30th day of the riots is June 24th. That's today. It's also the 149th day after the deal of the century. So the 25th. So tomorrow could be an interesting day because it could be 150th day. Because there's something with 150 in the story of Noah, where, so let me see if I can find it really quick. Because that could be an interesting day, because we see in the story of Noah. Okay, here's Noah. Okay. Let's see if I can find this really quickly here. Noah, where are you, Noah? Okay. Okay, so it says the water prevailed upon the earth 150 days. Okay, so water, first we have the water prevailing 15 cubits higher, and all the mountains were covered. And then it goes on to say the water prevailed upon the earth 150 days. So that's why I'm wondering tomorrow could be an interesting day, being the 150th day. Because water basically would be like, like with the ark, we saw that, it was like all the people that got killed were in the water, and then like Pharaoh's men get killed in the water. So the water is like kind of, and the sea too is like where God's enemies are, So if the water increases, it means that God's enemies are increasing. So that's why tomorrow could be an interesting day, being the 150th day. So that would be June 25th. Okay. So then it said on the third day is Pharaoh's birthday, so that was 3 days after June 20th. And so June 23rd, and so, that could have been, like I said, we saw kind of like the birth of Obama or the return of Obama yesterday on June 23rd. What was interesting about June 20th is that that was when Trump had his rally in Tulsa. That was when we hit the mark of 120,000 coronavirus deaths in the United States. And so another 120 connected to Trump. And so that's why I'm wondering if we're going to see a shifting. We kind of did yesterday. And then what's interesting too is summer began on the 20th, and then it was also the day that was 1 year after Trump changed his mind on attacking Iran. Okay, so he was really close to going to war with Iran a year ago, and we would all be in a better place if he did. So anyways, and it's interesting because June 20th is 6/20/2020, so kind of interesting. And then so there's a connection with summer. Okay, so it says, now learn the parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth its leaves, you know that summer is near. I think there's a connection with summer to the Messiah. So definitely a very interesting time right now. Okay, so we're in summer. We've seen the downfall of America. Like I said, I think we're just at the prophetic end. We're just, the next step is Israel's going to get attacked, and so we're going to see the downfall of Israel, and then the Messiah should come pretty soon after, I'm hoping. Okay, and then in Daniel, another time frame we could look at, Daniel talks about 7 weeks and 62 weeks. And so 7 weeks after the deal of the century, the lockdown started. 6 weeks, we had 6 weeks of the shutdown. And then what I think now is we've been in this time frame of 2 weeks, quote unquote, of 30 days. Okay, so 60 days total. Let's see. What do I have here? 11/14/2016 is the Obama News Conference when he encourages Americans to give Trump time to adjust. So 11/14/2016 to 4/26/2020, when the shutdown ended, was 1260 days. 30 days later, when the riot started, was 1290 days. So July 10th would be 1335 days from this 11/14 date. And then we're supposed to be blessed on 1335. I'm not really sure if we're gonna see. I'm not really sure of the significance of July 10th. Unless we have to wait for July 10th for the Messiah to show up. So I'm not really sure about that. One thought I had was, because like I said, I think, we have these two time frames of 30 days. And so I mean it's possible that the time frame we're in now with the rioting could happen 42 days, because God says, it there we see 42 days listed in, that's when they trampled the courts for 42 days. Ugh, which, you know, uh, which means we would have to wait longer. So that takes us to, I think that takes us to, okay, so we're on day 30, so that would be 12 more days. So 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42. So that takes us to July 6th or 7th. Well, it takes us to July 6th for 42 days. I mean, and then it could still be 3 days after that. So 7, 8, 9. And then, it says we're blessed, on July 10th. So maybe the Messiah is going to come on July 10th. Maybe the Messiah is going to come on July 7th. Maybe the Messiah will come tonight or tomorrow, because of tomorrow being 150 days. So, like I said on the partial prophet, I won't really know till things totally happen. I just see patterns, okay? But then my whole thing with the 2 weeks of 30 days doesn't quite work. So then I'll have to be like the GPS and recalculate everything. Okay, so I want to talk about this picture. So I said, like, I think we have the sea of Obama on the left and we have the sea of Trump on the right. And God's people are the quiet people in the middle. We follow God's laws. We wear masks. We stay outside of Babylon. In Revelation 16, we read that the great city was split into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell. Babylon the Great was remembered before God to give her the cup of the wine of his fierce wrath. And then, so in Revelation 13, it says, okay, so reading about Trump on the right side, it says, and he causes all the small and the great and the rich and the poor and the free man and the slaves to be given a mark on their right hand or on their forehead. So at first I thought the mark was just connected to Trump. And so then I was trying to figure out, so I figured out with his, I mentioned this earlier in the video about the hat, the MAGA hat on the forehead, okay? And then I was wondering about, because like the horseman that Trump is, the third horseman, has the scales in his hand, so there's a connection to the buying and the selling, so that connects to the merchants. And so his people, we saw that they were like the shutdown protesters who didn't wear masks and they were anxious to get back to buying and selling. But then I was wondering too, because with the Black Lives Matter people, they have their symbol is the fist. And so, because it's a symbol of power, because they're all about the power. So I'm wondering if maybe the forehead connects to Trump's people and the right hand connects to Obama's people. And then, so let's read about, in Revelation 12, it says, another sign appeared in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his heads were 7 diadems. And his tail swept away 1/3 of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. Okay, so we see that, the tail would be kind of connected to like the tail end. So maybe this last month of Obama, his tail is sweeping away the stars of heaven. Could be the Christians in America that are falling for the Black Lives Matter, the great falling away. But that connects too also to the their great city being split into 3 parts. Okay. Because who will you bow to? All right, so that's my video. Babylon is fallen. So really technically it's more like Babylon is fallen and we're awaiting the last fallen. Okay. I mean, at least today, right now, on July July, June 24th. Okay. And then at some point we'll have the other fallen. Okay. So thank you so much for tuning in. Hang in there. The Messiah is at the door. I think we are so close to wrapping up the end of prophecy. And so hang in there, because the next steps are, okay, so we're going to see Israel get attacked. We're going to see the Messiah show up. We already got Obama's back in the picture. So that's already happened. And then so now we're just awaiting for the Messiah to show up to make a division between God's people and God's enemies. And so then Jesus is, I think what's going to happen is we're going to be put back in the shutdown for like 40 days while Jesus is up in the mountain. He's going to put his people, we're going to be in like our Passover homes, with the blood of the lamb on it. And then, we're going to be protected from all the craziness that's going to happen with Trump's people and Obama's people left behind to, basically kill each other. Okay, because you know how in the Samson story he says, "Let me die with the Philistines," and so basically what we're going to see is that Trump's people, who do not, they have one last chance when the Messiah is here to switch teams and head over to the Messiah's team. But then after that, the door is going to be shut, and they won't be able to come over. And so then Jesus is going to step out of the way, and we're going to be protected. And then, basically, really, Jesus doesn't have to worry about doing too much to get rid of his enemies, because if he just steps out of the way, they'll end up killing each other. We see that a lot in scripture. So that's what we're expecting. So hang in there. I know it's hard. I know it's crazy in the world right now. But God has a plan. He's, we're getting close to seeing the wrap up of it. We're going to see the glory of God. We're going to see the Messiah really soon. He's at the door. So hang in there. Pray for God's grace. Read the Psalms. They're great for lamenting during this hard time. Like Psalm 9 is really a good psalm for right now. And then tomorrow, like Psalm 22 might be a good psalm to read. So thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you are blessed, and we will catch you later.